expert in the area of forensic biology, serology, immunology, forensic, and anthropology. They taught these subjects for more than 2 years. Prior coming to GD Goenka University, she was at a Jain University at Bangalore. She is also going to complete 1 year at GD Goenka University. And dear colleagues, today's session is actually on personal identification in forensic science from living and dead bodies. So they will speak about the personal identification and so on. I think I should not go in detail, just a bit, that the personal identification is the process of establishing the identity of an individual, whether living or dead. So the need to identify the dead as well as living is important for social and medical legal purposes. Therefore, this session will expose to establishing identity for living and dead bodies. I'm sure about the various characteristics of one body which can help this. I would like to invite both the speaker Bharti and Priya Sharma ji to initiate the talk, and you all are requested to mute your mic and camera, and also if you have any curiosity you can just drop a question there, and we have say Dr. Renu Singh and the team faculty member. They will either note down or maybe after completing the session they will allow you to ask the question to both the speakers. Thank you so much indeed, Dr. Renu Singh. So I think this is the time we should start. And Madam, I welcome again Mala Bharti ji and Priya Sharma. Please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Good morning, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning.
Yeah, very good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
First of all, I would like to thank Dean School of Basic and Applied Sciences, Dr. R.K. Thakur, for providing us with this opportunity to present in this webinar session for Student Development Program. Now I will start with the session. The first half of the session I will cover, and the second half will be covered by Ms. Mala Bharti. So I will share my screen. I hope my screen is visible to all. Renu ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. It is visible.
Okay. So first of all, I'll introduce myself as sir has already introduced. I'm Priya Sharma, lecturer of Forensic Science at School of Basic and Applied Sciences, GD Goenka University. And we are going to present our talk on personal identification in forensic science from living and dead bodies. So first of all, I will start with the introduction of the topic, that identification. It is the determination of individuality of a person, whether it's living or dead. So why do we need identification in case of dead bodies? Whether a person is recently dead, whether we found a decomposed body or unknown body, it may be possible that we may have found some of the mutilated body parts or bone fragments. In that case, we need to find out the identity of that person. There are humanitarian reasons as well, like dead person has a right to be disposed of with the ceremonies of his own religion, and the family of that respective person should be informed about this. In case of living, as you must have seen in our daily life, for issuing various identity cards, passports, driving licenses, and other legal documents, we need to establish the identity of a person. There are other areas as well, like some person is getting death benefits or disputed sex, like there are some cases in forensic science where like concealed sex people, they will try to hide their sex, or we need to find out accused person who have some criminal charges, or in case of free marriages, a person is missing, or in case of mass disasters where we may get so many bone fragments or body parts. So in that case, we need to establish the identity of that person. There are nowadays case like someone may stole the ID card of that person. In that case, we need to find out the identity. So in forensic science, the most important thing is to establish the corpus delicti. Corpus delicti, basically, this term refers to the body of crime. Means, in order to establish that a particular crime has been occurred, we need to establish that there should be one dead body, there should be weapon of the crime, and we need to find out that which particular person has been murdered. So for that person, we need to establish the identity. So these are certain points that we refer to establish the identity. As you can see, if we have found a dead body, we need to first find out whether it's a male body, it's a female body, what is the age of that person, what is the race, or what is the community background, that we can establish from the outer appearances, like what are the complexion feature, what is the hair type. From here we can establish the race of that person as well. Then if we have found a skull, like in the last month there was one webinar on the facial reconstruction. So from this skull we can reconstruct the facial features and we can predict the identity of that person. Similarly, if we have found, like in case of mass disasters, like teeth, they are the strongest part, so they don't get destroyed that much easily. So from the teeth, we can establish the identity. If we have found some any evidence at the crime scene with the bite marks, so from the bite marks as well, we can establish the identity. Nowadays, in case of biometrics, we use so many behavioral characteristics, or in question document division, we can use handwriting as well, as every person have individual handwriting. So from handwriting, we can establish the identity. From the walking pattern, that is a gait pattern, from speech recognition, anthropometry, this is one of the branch in which we take different bodily measurements to establish the identity of that person. Then there are certain acquired body marks, like some people, they are into some kind of occupation, they are doing so much physical works, like in case of tailors, they have some peculiar marks on their teeth. So that can tell us about some of the identity of that person, that that particular person may be a tailor. Similarly, a person may have got tattoos, that can also help us to establish the identity, because they are not easily removable once they will get, until and unless that person has undergone some surgery. Similarly, if there are certain injury marks, that can also help to establish the identity of a person. The last one that is fingerprints and DNA profiling. So these are nowadays are the most commonly used techniques which we are using for the identification purpose. Like DNA profiling, in case of monozygotic twins, they have similar DNA profiles. So again, in that case, how we will differentiate between two individuals. But in case of fingerprints, today I'm going to focus on this one particular point, that how we can establish identity using fingerprints. Even in case of monozygotic twins, we have different fingerprints. So this is one of the most important factor that we can use for the personal identification. So fingerprints, I'm sure at the end of this presentation, you all will be a fingerprint expert. You will be able to differentiate between your fingerprints and other person's fingerprints on the basis of whatever points that I'm going to mention. So what are fingerprints? Basically, these are the reproduction of friction ridges. They are found on the palmar side of the fingers, or in case of footprints, on the plantar side of your feet. So it is the most important, accurate, and unfailing method of positive identification. Little bit about the history of fingerprint science, like the idea that fingerprints could be used as a means of personal identification. It was first brought forward by Sir William Herschel He was a district magistrate of Hooghly district in West Bengal in 1858. Then after that, Dr. Henry Ford, he came with an idea. He traced latent print. I will discuss in the next slide. Latent prints, these are basically the invisible prints which are not visible with the naked eyes, found at the crime scene. So Dr. Henry Ford, he traced those prints and came to the conclusion that no two persons, they have alike fingerprints. Then with that idea, Sir Francis Galton, who is considered as father of fingerprints, he gave these two basic principles of fingerprints, that principle of uniqueness and the principle of permanency, that fingerprints, they remain permanent throughout our lifetime. Little bit about the structural part of friction ridges. As you must have seen, the skin of your body is relatively smooth except the palmar side or plantar side of your feet. So that skin is known as friction ridge skin or volar skin. This the main function in our body of this friction ridge skin is to provide our body with a firmer grasping power and resistance to slippage. This skin is further divided into different layers. Dermis and outer layer is the epidermis, which will give us the impressions. And this epidermis ridge, it is populated with rows of pores. Basically, these are the pores which have openings for which leads to the sweat glands. So these sweat glands will help in the perspiration. That residue will be discharged and it get deposited on the surface. So that residue will get deposited and onto the surface, and we can detect, or we can call it as a latent fingerprint. The print which is deposited and invisible to eye is known as latent fingerprint. Okay, so the basically perspiration, it is also combined with other oil secretions. Those are not present in your hands, but it is a general habit of people to touch the other hairy portion of our body, that continuously they are touching their face, their hairs. So what will happen, those oil residues, they also comes in the hand, and with the fingerprint residue, with the sweat composition, also some of the oily secretions, they get deposited onto the surface in the form of latent fingerprints. This is the general structure of different layers which are present on our skin, friction ridge skin. The top portion, you can say ridge islands, and they consist of these sweat pores and epidermis layer. These pores, they have opening into the dermis in which sweat glands are present. They are further connected with the different nerves which will provide, or different capillaries which will provide blood circulations. Then this epidermis layer, it is further divided into 5 these layers: horny, hyaline, granular, spinocerebellar, and basal layers. So why I'm telling you about these layers is basically that first principle I'm going to justify, that why fingerprints are permanent in nature. So basically, this strong structure, these basal cells, all these layers of the cells, they are joined together with the help of different layers, which will keep the structure permanent throughout our lifetime. And there is also one property of these cells that I will discuss, that these layers, they consist of these keratinocytes, these cells. These cells, they keep on dividing mitotically, and they will go, after dividing, they will replace to the upper layer. From the upper layer, they will go to the spinosum, then granulosum, and then lucidum, and then to the corneum layer. So this friction ridge persists because of the physical attachments throughout the skin. And even if you will get an injury and superficial injury, your cells, they are keep on dividing, and after going to the topmost layer, they will automatically shed off and replaced with the new cells. So automatically your skin will rejuvenate itself, and your friction ridges, they keep on intact. So there are certain attachments which will keep the structure intact. Like you can see here, primary and secondary ridges. At the bottom, they are attached with the anastosomes. Then your basal cells, they are attached with the dermis, second layer with the hemidesmosomes. and the cells within the basal layers, they are attached with the desmosomes. So they will help in the persistence of friction-rich skin. Now, what are the effects or diseases? What are the effects of certain injuries or diseases? There are certain diseases like aplasia, or here you can see I have shown one diagram, hand eczema, certain skin allergy. It may possible in such cases that ridges may not be that much or it may be completely absent in that person. But from forensic point of view, if I will look at this exception, that will leads to individualize that person more, because there will be very less people with that kind of condition. So automatically we can identify that person, because our basic purpose is to identify that person. So very few people will be having this diseases and these conditions, and we can narrow down the list of suspects on the basis of that exception as well. In case of injury, if I will talk about, if injury is not much deep, means up to dermis level, if it is not up to dermis level, then the basal layer, it can automatically, it will repair itself by proliferating cells, and then we can it can return to its original shape after some time. Here you can see these are the pictures of the same person. First picture was painted in 1980 when he has normal skin condition, but sometime what happens, warts get developed on the skin due to some physical activity or any other reasons. These warts, they may get developed. So here what you have seen, those warts may disappear automatically after some time. So what you must see in the figure third, which was printed in after like in 1982, you can see the ridges, they return to their original configuration, means their deeper structure at the dermis level. The ridges, they remain intact even if there are certain changes due to injury, temporary changes on the skin due to any other reason. So if there is any injury in that, or we can say permanent injury, and it can leave scar in the fingerprint, again that scar can be used as a personal identification mark, and we can find out that person. We can compare the other ridge characteristic, and we can find out the or establish the identity of that person. Now the second principle was why fingerprints are unique. As it is said that fingerprints, they are unique in nature. So for that we can discuss about the morphogenesis. Like when the friction ridges, they get start develop when the baby in the womb. So first hand will starts to develop, and then after that fingers, they will get developed, and there is formation of volar pads. Volar pads are basically these are the swellings of mesenchymal tissues under your epidermis. In case of fingers, I'll just show you the picture. So this is showing the growth of hand. You can see at the picture A, first there is paddle-like form, then fingers, they got separated, then there is formation of these volar pads on the fingertips, on the palm as well. So after the formation of these volar pads, they will appear at 7 to 8 weeks at estimated gestation age, we will call it as. Then at after 10 to 12 weeks, those volar pads, they begin to disappear, or we will call it as recession of these volar pads. So these volar pads, we will see in the next slide how they are responsible for the pattern of these ridges on our fingerprints. At the end of 13th week, your ridges, they will start to appear, and between the time of 10 to 16 weeks, there are local factors like the pressure of amniotic fluid inside the womb. All these factors, they influence the fingerprint pattern, and they are responsible for the uniqueness of fingerprints. At the end of 21st week, your fingerprint pattern is completely developed. So here, this picture is showing the volar pad formation and regression. Like 6 to 7 weeks, after that, they will start forming. They will like bulge-like formation is there, and then what is the shape, what is the elevation of these volar pads? They are responsible for the pattern type in the fingerprints. After certain weeks, you can see they will start regressing, and pattern will be formed on the fingers. So the general pattern, it depends on different factors like what is the shape and size of fuller pad, what is the timing between regression and onset of primary ridge formation, then relative speed of development friends like inside womb, so many other organs they are keep on developing, your fingers they keep on developing. So what is the relative speed of different development friends, your amniotic fluid, there is so much developmental noise inside it which is responsible to incorporate individual features into the fingerprints. As in case of monozygotic twins, they are getting the same environment but still they have these different fingerprint characteristics. We can differentiate between the fingerprints of both of the twins. So that is completely random, like what characteristics can be introduced in what position of the fingertip. Then what is a bone morphology? It also affects the general pattern of the ridges. There are three levels of uniqueness of these friction ridges, like the overall pattern, which depends on the growth and regression of volar pad. Like here, you can see if the volar pad is higher, it will lead to the formation of this round pattern, which we will call it as whirl. Low pad responsible for arch pattern, and intermediate if it is steep on the one side or the right side to the left side. And advanced if it is steep on the right side to the left side. So these are the levels of uniqueness of these friction ridges. Then on the basis of these certain features, like the center portion of fingerprint pattern is known as core. The overall outlining of the pattern is known as type line. This triangular region is known as delta. So on the basis of these features, we will classify these fingerprint patterns into arc, loop, whirl, and composite, and they are further subclassified into plain canted arc, like arc pattern. So you will notice in your finger tips that there are these patterns are present in your fingertips. Here is a plain arc, canted arc, then there is a formation of loop where you can see there is core is present, delta is present. In case of central pocket loop, one delta and central pocket like structure is present. Then this is whirl pattern, round pattern. There are two deltas and one central core is present. Then there are composite patterns like double loops, like two cores opening to the opposite sides and two deltas. There are accidental patterns, the patterns which are combination of one or two classes which we cannot keep in one class. We will call them as accidental patterns. So this is the level 1 classification, level 1 details. Then there are level 2 details. If we will further move, these patterns, they consist of these details जिनको हम minutia बोलते हैं. So rigid, these are known as ridge characteristics. Ridge characteristics are basically what is the shape and size of our friction ridges, and so many factors are responsible for the introduction of these ridges, like bifurcation. This is known as bifurcation. This one ridge is opening into two ridges, and why it is because the new ridge, if we will see, the normal pattern will be plain ridges, but due to developmental noise, your ridges, they undergo pulling and pushing by various forces. They will lead to the formation of bifurcation. If ridges, they are sandwiched between the established ridges, it will lead to the development of short ridge. So this is how so many ridge characteristics will be introduced. These are the features that we will notice in fingerprint pattern, like what is the location. It may be possible bifurcation is present in so many fingerprints, but what is the relative location of that bifurcation? What is the location of ridge ending? So all those locations, they are noticed. Then at the third level, we will look for you will see under microscope, these ridges, they consist of these pores, sweat pores. So there is full-fledged different branch of fingerprint science, poroscopy and hagioscopy. In poroscopy, we will establish the identity by the comparison of sweat pores, what is the shape, size of those sweat pores, and in case of hagioscopy, what is the edges shape. It is convex, concave, and what is the length of ridges. So we will look for the edges of ridges in case of edgescopy. So these 3-level details are compared between question fingerprint and standard fingerprint, and we will try to establish the identity. Different techniques of fingerprint in case of leaving. As you can see in this picture, 2 types of impressions are taken. Plain print means you will place your hands on fingerprint ink, or nowadays fingerprint pads are available in which black ink is available. They have to just put your finger on the pad, and the person has to put the impression on the there's one 10-digit fingerprint card on which 10 fingers impressions are taken. Second type of impression that we have to take is rolled impression, because in crime scene, it may be possible that side portion of finger is present, fingerprint is present. So in that case, we need to take the overall impression of the fingerprint by taking the rolled fingerprint, in which outward to inward your finger is rolled to get the entire tip impression. In case of dead bodies, it depends in what condition we have got the dead body. So in that case, we need to, if body is stiff, as after death, dead body undergoes so many stages like cooling of dead body or that case. So we have to we have to straighten the fingerprint. If body is stiff, hand is not straight, we have to straighten the fingers. In case of decomposed bodies, if we have found hand only, so in that case, what we can do, we can just separate the fingers, place in 10% formalin, and then we can take the fingerprints. If skin is very much loose, we can take the fingerprint ridges impressions from the dermis part. If body is mummified, like very dried up, then we can dip in various solutions to swell up the hands, and then we can take the fingerprints. These are some of the tools that can be used to take the fingerprints, like rolled impression if we want. So this is a spoon-shaped tool in which we can take the impressions very easily in case of dead bodies. In case of like I told you, macerated hand, body is completely decomposed, we can use this boiling treatment. So you can see after boiling treatment, your hand is completely swelled. So this osmotic rehydration technique can be used to bring the hand into normal condition, and then we can take the fingerprints. I'll just try to wind up because next session will be taken by Mala ma'am. So there are different types of fingerprints, like I told you, latent prints, which are not visible with the naked eyes, then plastic prints, which are 3D in nature, like they are into some kind of soft material, so we can cast those prints from the crime scene. Then there are patent prints, which are visible like blood stain prints, so we can simply photograph them. In case of latent prints, we have to use different development methods like physical techniques or chemical techniques, like powder method you can see in the picture. So basically, I told you your fingerprint residue, it consists of various sweat residues, oily secretions, lipids, and salts. So we can use any kind of chemical treatment which will react with those fingerprints, and we can develop those fingerprints and further analyze them. So powder method, certain metal deposition method, certain fumes can be used which will react with the amino acids, like iodine fuming method is one of the most famous method which is used to develop fingerprints on the porous surface. So we have to decide what is the nature of surface. On the basis of that, we will apply different developing techniques. So these are some of the instruments which are used to develop the fingerprints. These are fuming devices which are used to develop the fingerprints at crime scene and in the laboratory. Then at last, comparison of fingerprints. We follow this rule, ACEV, analysis, comparison, evaluation, and verification. We have to follow this stepwise procedure for the comparison of fingerprints. There is no fixed rule. There are different countries, they adopt different number of points to be compared. Like generally we accept 16 to 20 points. Like I'll show you in the picture. Like this is a comparison chart. in which first we will look for what is the general pattern. If general pattern is similar, like here you can see it is a round pattern with the delta with the core, and in another pattern it is also the similar pattern. So then we will further move for the rich characteristics, that is level to details, bifurcations, and then we will further compare what is the location of the this respective rich characteristics. And then here you can see there are 12 characteristics we have compared, which are sufficient to establish the identity. So we need to find out the sufficient number of characteristics, and then we can find out whether this particular fingerprint belongs to this person or not. So this was the ACEV process. First, we have to analyze whether the latent print is adequate, because sometimes what happens, the fingerprint is, or the latent print is in very bad condition that we may not be able to compare it. So it is up to the expert. He will first establish that whether it has the value for comparison stage or not. If it has, then they will further move for the comparison stage. They will compare these first, second, third level details, and then they will move for the evaluation. In the evaluation, they will see that how many characteristics are matching, how many characteristics are not matching, like 12 to 16 characteristics are acceptable. Then they will move for the conclusion part, like if they are not matching, they will exclude it. And if sufficient characteristics are not present, they may also call it as inconclusive result. At the last, if they have completed the evaluation step, they will move for the verification step, in which they require to get the examination done with another expert. If they will come to a consensus that their examination is similar, then they will arrive at a final conclusion. So that is very much important, the verification step for the 100% identification of that fingerprint. So nowadays we have automated fingerprint identification system, AFIS, which will digitally capture the image, and then with the help of software, they will compare these rich characteristics, their respective position and orientation. This is showing the side-by-side comparison of latent print. And in India, the Indian version of FIS is FACTS, which is co-developed by National Crime Record Bureau. And they also store the non-fingerprint information with the fingerprint data, like gender, region, or whether they have any previous conviction of that person. So this is the automated fingerprint identification system, which is used in India. It is used at Central Fingerprint Bureau. They have this database which can be referred for the identification purpose. In case like dead body has found, they can compare these fingerprint with this central database. So I'm done from my side. If you have any queries, you can ask. Now I'll ask Mala ma'am to proceed with the further session.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll just present my slide. Ma'am, is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Ma'am, shall I start?
Sure, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, all of you. And Priya ma'am has very nicely explained about the fingerprints and its role in the identification. I'll proceed with forensic anthropology and how it is helping us to identify a dead individual. So I'll briefly talk about forensic anthropology as a branch of forensic science, and what is the significance of forensic anthropology, with an example how we are identifying a parameter in forensic anthropology. So I think most of the people are unaware or about the whole branch of forensic anthropology, as it is always shadowed by either anthropology or forensic science. So forensic anthropology is a subfield of anthropology, and that comes under the biological or physical anthropology. So here, the whole knowledge of physical anthropology or biological anthropology, which we call of, regarding the human, and any crime which occurs, right? So how the whole information about the human and the anatomy, the forensic medicine, forensic science, it is helping in terms of law and to solve a case. So mostly in forensic anthropology, the cases which comes under this are the skeletal remains which we are finding at the crime scene. So be it a plane crash, be it a mass disaster, a huge number of skeletal remains are found at the crime scene, and these bones are sent to the forensic anthropologist for the further analysis. So overall, forensic anthropology is the application of physical anthropology, anatomy, forensic medicine, along with your forensic science. Whereas the definition given by the American Board of Forensic Anthropology defines it as the application of science of physical anthropology to the legal processes. Identification of skeletal, badly decomposed, or otherwise unidentified human remains is important for both legal and humanitarian reasons. Forensic anthropologists apply the standard scientific techniques developed in physical anthropology to identify human remains and assist in detection of crime. So the role of the forensic anthropologist is to give the opinion regarding the individual, to identify the individual, to narrow it down, and to find out the individual without getting into the DNA analysis. So in that, certain instruments they use, certain anthropometric instruments are being used to find out the dimensions and to find out certain length, breadth of those bones, and then we are doing the biological profiling of that individual. So it's very much necessary that person who is giving the opinion should have a proper knowledge of anatomy, a proper knowledge of medicine as well, to an extent, right, to give the opinion. So the role of the forensic anthropologist is way different from the pathologist. So he is not a person who is giving the reasons why everything happened, or to give a proper identification, but to give a biological profiling of that individual based upon the skeletal remains found. So it's very much important a person is thorough with the anatomy, osteology, the total number of bones in our body, which type of bone it is. Because once reaching at the crime scene, if a person is not having, a forensic expert is not having the information about the anatomy, these bones will be sent to the forensic anthropologist, be it in the academics field, be it a professor of anthropology. He can give the opinion that, okay, yes, this is a human bone, and then further that it is a female's bone, or the age can be approximately 22 years, then the stature can be around 6 feet. So to give certain opinion like that, it is very much important that the anthropologist or the expert is thorough with the knowledge of anatomy. So it's very much important to have the anatomical information, anatomical knowledge, be it which type of bone it is, with which bone it is attached. So I'll not be getting into all these bones. I'm just trying to imply that it is very much necessary and imperative that the expert is thorough with the knowledge of anatomy. Coming to the significance, when we talk of forensic anthropology, it helps us to determine certain things from the crime scene, and we are definitely in the world of where we can directly go for the DNA and we can identify. But nevertheless, the forensic anthropology is narrowing it down, and by giving us certain direction to the case, it tells us certain factors, just merely observing the crime scene or observing the number of bones which are present. So it gives us the opinion of total number of bones which are present, right? Then the age estimation, stature estimation, sex determination, any sort of injury which is present, be it an injury which just happened or it happened before the death or after the death, so it can be perimortem, it can be postmortem, it can be an antemortem injury which can be detected on the bone. So if the bone is very carefully observed, we can tell about that the injury happened at the moment, just before the death, or it happened pretty early, or it happened after the death, depending upon the amount of healing the bone has undergone. So looking at the healing process in the bone, we can give our opinion regarding the perimortem, postmortem, or antemortem sort of injury. Then the type of crime. So regarding the type of crime, be it an arson case, or be it any weapon being used, a projectile weapon or a sharp weapon or a hammer, any sort of weapon which is being used, and it has got the amount of force that it is harming the skeleton, and let's say and later the body was discarded or it was buried. So if we are recovering the bone even after huge gap, we can easily find out that what happened, and we can reconstruct the things as well. So looking at the mark made by those weapon on the bone, we can even determine the type of crime, what happened exactly during that time. Or if a person was suffering from certain bone disorder, or so that can even be bone can be examined and an opinion regarding the disease can be given. So these helps to identify, it helps to narrow it down. So one of the famous case of actress, South Indian actress Saundarya, you might have heard about it, that a plane crash, she along with a few other people died in the plane crash. So in such cases where the body which is found is completely in a state, unidentifiable state. So in such cases, the forensic anthropology again plays a very important role. Be it from the skull, we can determine the age, sex, be it the pelvis. So basically, I'm trying to imply here that in such cases like the plane crash, or be it cases like a mass disaster where loads of bone are being recovered at the crime scene. In such cases, forensic anthropology plays an important role. It's not feasible to go for DNA from each and every bone, right? And to find out or to identify the individual. And like Priya ma'am was mentioning about it, that identification is not just a legal factor here. It's also on the humanitarian grounds, it's very much important that we're identifying the individual, and it's not always that it has to be a case and in that we have to identify the person so that a certain verdict has to be given in that case. Also on the humanitarian grounds, it is important that we are identifying that individual so that the family gets to know and family can get a closure on that. So again, the case of mass disaster, Uttarakhand mass disaster, where loads of skeletal remains were obtained from the scene, and they were sent to different universities and different laboratories for the identification purpose. Also, when any bone is recovered from the scene, it is again very much important that we are able to tell that it's human or animal. So hence there has to be clarity while examining the bone, right? And I think, moreover, more than this, it is important that we are first able to identify its bone or not. Right, so there can be certain pieces of plastic, stone, wood, which might give an impression of a bone, but that is not bone. So, carefully examining it, looking at its, microscopic structure, we can, give our opinion regarding whether or not it's bone. And once we are assured that a forensic expert or forensic anthropologist is assured that this is a bone, then we have to necessarily check that it's human or animal bone, because you can imagine the amount of burials are there, and we can always get confused between human or animal bone, right? Because the bones look pretty similar, be it the humerus, femur, it looks pretty similar, right? In the shape, whereas there are small, peculiarities in human and animal bone, which can be used. Those differences can be used to distinguish whether it's a human or animal bone. And the most important out of it is that, us being the bipedal and the animals being the quadrupedal, it plays a big role in the anatomical differences in human and animal. So here, one example is being shown here, that you can see the, on the left hand side, you can see that it's the adult human, and on the right hand side is the deer cranium, and you can see the difference in the, the vault, the vault or the eye socket. Here you can see the differences in it, and mostly the, in human, the eye sockets are anteriorly placed, whereas in the animals it's on the lateral side, right? So these small difference, I could not incorporate each and every difference here, but what again I'm trying to imply, that there are certain anatomical peculiarities both in animal and human bone, which can be used to distinguish um, these bones. This is again one of the significance here. So that is facial reconstruction, and one of the webinars we had, in which sir very nicely explained about the facial reconstruction. So this is one of the example, 3D facial reconstruction using the clay. So by using the clay, the whole face is being remodeled again. So you can see here that, in the skull, that we have specific anatomical landmarks, and these tend to be very much fixed, and hence, looking at those landmarks, it can be used to reconstruct the individual, right? But in such cases, it's very much important that we have, the previous picture, right? So just now I was showing you the image of the South Indian actress. Her face was even reconstructed, right, using this technique, after the plane crash, because mostly in such cases, the whole face is completely demolished, it's destroyed. Hence it's important that it can be reconstructed to get an assurance. Okay, so little bit I'll discuss how it all started. Um, how, the whole of the, about the forensic anthropology started. So this is always, the forensic anthropology was always overshadowed by anthropology, like I was mentioning. So initially when the cases came, so those who had the information and the knowledge about the anatomy, they were approached in certain cases like that, and it was never termed as forensic anthropology, right? So one of the cases was the Lugard case, in which he was accused of killing his wife. So he used certain chemical to, and killed his wife using that in his factory. So he committed this whole crime in the factory, but what happened, that certain remnants were left, certain bones were left of her finger, along with the ring that were left, and definitely certain material from the flesh or the skin which were left like a oil. Fine. So along with that, 2-3 pieces of the bones of the phalanges were left. So along with the ring. So again, in that case, there wasn't any forensic anthropologist, but they approached an anatomist, George A. Dorsey, and he claimed that these finger bones which are present, they are from his wife. And you can imagine that again in this case, like the identification was done based on those small bones. So initially, it wasn't the forensic anthropology anywhere, but they took the help from the anatomist and the professors, in the medicine university and all. So then the individual who introduced the world with something called as forensic anthropology was Dr. Thomas Dwight. So he has done tremendous amount of work in this field and done a lot of research on how to determine the age or sex or height from the sternum, then estimation of the stature without using bones of arms and legs. So basically stature was determined with other bones rather than the limb bones. Then the age at death from the closure of joints from the bones of the skull, which we call it as suture. So as the suture is closing, the union of suture is happening in the skull, that is with respect to the age, right? So at a certain age, these suture fuses, these suture closes. So that helps us to determine the age. Then the sex determination from the joints of the long bones. So he has done a huge amount of work in the field of forensic anthropology, and he is the one who has introduced the world to the forensic anthropology by associating it with the use of the knowledge about the human anatomy, osteology in the legal setting. Then another person I would like to introduce is Bertillon. So Bertillon, gave the portrait parley, right? And this again one of the first work which was done. Yes, so one of the first work which was done in the field of identification. So according to him, by having certain measurements, bodily measurements, and keeping a record of it, we can create a database and we can identify the individual using that. And we're talking about the criminals. So he was working with the whole prison system for a long period of time, and his role there was to write the dimensions, like the stature or the hand length, hand breadth. So in that prison, so whenever a criminal used to come, he used to write all the details of that individual. So he developed a thought that why not, we can take these dimensions of an individual and keep and maintain a database. So hence, if any crime is happening in a certain area, and we're aware that after doing whole crime scene reconstruction and all, we get to know that, okay, a person is of this height and, this much dimensions of the person, measurements of the person. So with that, we can identify that person. So initially, a few cases yet did solve by this whole concept of the portrait parley, but later it was criticized very much, because you can understand that a person of same height, there can be numerous people of same height, same sitting height, same standing height, same hand length, same foot length. So that is a possibility which can be seen in numerous people. So this whole concept was later criticized, but then again during that phase, he came up with a concept of identifying the individual using the physical characteristic, was much appreciated. And
Excuse me, ma'am. Sorry to interrupt, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
Ma'am, it's at 12 o'clock, so please try
Yes,
to.
ma'am. Surely, I'll just. It's very brief. I'll just wrap it
Oh,
up very
okay,
quickly.
okay, okay. Thank
So
you,
this
ma'am.
is a Bertillon card. So according to him, and if we are, keeping a record of all these physical characteristics for each individual criminal who is coming, that will help us to identify the other criminals when they are committing the crime, though his whole concept was criticized later. So whenever we recover a bone at the crime scene, the first thing which is done is the cleaning part. Before we are collecting it, it's very much important that we are removing all the contaminants from it, and looking into those contaminants as well, along with the flesh as too. So if the bone has got huge amount of flesh over it, it's very much important that we are using certain domicide insects which can remove those flesh from those bones. So it's important to clean those bones before we are packing it. Then sorting and identification. It's important that we are identifying that it's human or animal bone, and we're looking into the medico-legal significance of it. Then we are checking that if there is any commingling of the bones, so that we can get to know that how many number of people were there, right? So minimum number of individual should even be seen. And while we are doing the analysis as a forensic. Yes, so as a forensic expert, the reports are given regarding the minimum number of individual, the sex of that individual, the age estimation, stature, and the race. So with stature, we have certain regression formulas in which we put the values depending upon the dimensions of the bones which are recovered, and then we get the stature of the person. Age, like I mentioned, one of the examples is the union of the cranial sutures which are present. Then with the race, we determine that whether the person, broadly we classify that if the person is a negroid or a caucasoid or a mongoloid. And for that we have several index, like we have cephalic index, we have nasal index, and we use these indexes, and we get a certain range in that, and we determine the race of the person. So very small example I'm taking, that how we determine one of the parameters, and in that in this we'll just determine the sex of the individual with the help of pelvis, right? So basic introduction what pelvis is. So this is how pelvis looks like, right? And what we are trying to do here is we are trying to look that this is a male or a female pelvis. So pelvis bone is also known as the coxal bone, and few information regarding those coxal bone is mentioned here. So this is how the one coxal bone looks like. It is made up of 3 bones, and this is how it appears. So I'll just quickly go to the difference, how it is present in the male and the female. So the whole purpose of the pelvis is, yes, definitely to protect the internal organs and provide the support. But the design is made in a manner that the pelvis can support, in male, it can support the heavy, heavy structure, heavy bodily structure of the male, and the muscle structure in the male, whereas in the female, the pelvis is designed in a manner that it can bear a child, and it for the easier delivery as well. So when we get to the pictures, you will understand better that how the structure of the pelvis is in a manner that it can support the development of the fetus, and at the same time for the easy delivery. Second is the sacrum. So sacrum is one of the part of the pelvis, and it is longer in male, whereas it is wider in female. Whereas the pelvic brim, it is heart shaped in male, whereas it is oval shape in the in the female. And then the acetabulum is the part where your femur gets attached. So that cup-shaped part where your femur is getting attached on, on the lateral sides, these are larger for the male, whereas it's smaller in size for the female. Then ileum, the wing-like structure which you see in the pelvis, is ileum, and it is more vertical in male, whereas for female it's much more broader, right? So there is another portion in the ischium of the pelvis, which is called as the ischial tuberosity, and it is much longer in male, whereas it is shorter in female. Then the pubic arch is V-shaped for male, whereas it is much wider for the female. And the sciatic notch is narrower, and whereas in female it's wider. The coccyx is projected inward in male, whereas it is much straighter and flexible. Then the obturator foramen is round for male, and it's oval for female. The pelvic bone is heavier and much taller and much thicker in male, whereas it's thinner and shorter in female. The pelvic outlet is narrower for male, and it is wider for female. See, actually, I was supposed to go a little slow, first introduce you all to the structure and then ask you this question, but I'll just myself give some and explain here. So, this one here is male and this one is female. I'll explain you how. That you can see the angle here. So this is your subpubic angle. This is acute for male and this is obtuse for female. So you can see this arch shape here. This is called as subpubic.
Hello. Hello.
So talk is complete.
I think, sir, it is approximately it is complete because I think she has lost the connection also.
Oh, I
Priya
understand.
ma'am, Priya ma'am,
Yes, ma'am. I
ma'am,
will try to contact.
so I think she was about to finish. She was at the last leg of her lecture. So shall
Yeah.
we, sir, with your due permission,
Just
shall we start to the questionnaire?
yeah, for the question, okay, we can start. But how many questions are there? Maybe you can just ask a question to Priya Sharma ji
Yes,
because she has conducted the session first.
yes, sir. Hello, Priya ma'am.
Hello. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank to you, and thank to Mala Bharti ma'am also for delivering such an interesting lecture. You both have beautifully explained the significance of forensic science in the anthropology and person identification. And you both have ignited our budding students. So we have a few queries with you regarding this subject. Ma'am Shivani Sharma, she is asking that, ma'am, can we determine the religion from the bone?
Ma'am, this is for I think Mala ma'am because she was taking the session,
Okay.
but I can answer. I think there
Madam,
are other questions.
there are other questions too. Ma'am, can we detect the drugs from fingerprints? Uh,
Yes, Shivani, we can detect drugs from fingerprints. As I told you about the structural part, like the epidermis, dermis, they are connected with the blood capillaries. So whenever a person will take any consume any kind of drugs, it will get automatically will go or metabolites will go into the blood. So from that, you must have seen whenever a person will touch any surface he will deposit so many residues with body secretions as well. So from that touch residue we can detect the drugs from that. Even we can detect the DNA from fingerprint as well. You must have heard about the touch DNA, so we can also detect the DNA as well from the fingerprint.
Ma'am, another question is from Ashima. She is asking what is the number of minutes in a fingerprint images?
Okay, minutia rich characteristics. Ashma, as much we cannot definitely say that this is the number of rich characteristics. We can just estimate. It depends on the what is the size of fingers in that person as well. So approximately we can find out like 150 200, like in hundreds we can find out the rich characteristics in one fingerprint. But again, I'm saying that this we can just predict it. It's not definite.
Ma'am, next question is from Shivani. She was the previous question which I've asked. I think Mala ma'am still she has not joined.
Oh, ma'am, just a
Uh,
second. Ma'am is calling. I'm just ask her whether she
okay,
will be able to join or not. Just give
okay,
me 1 minute.
sure, ma'am.
You have how many questions do you have, Dr. Singh?
So, sir, two questions more, sir.
Okay. So, but anyway,
Uh,
all this
Ma'am, Mala ma'am
throughout the session.
is not able to join, so we can conclude the session.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
okay, okay, sir. Okay, ma'am.
So
Thank
next
you, ma'am.
question, please.
Ma'am, another question was what is uh, just if leg and hands are separated by cutting from any tool, can we identify that tool from bones, ma'am?
Yes, we can identify like there is separate branch for that tool marks examination. So from the like we have used saw for cutting the parts and all. So what is the marks of the tool on the bone fragments? We can there may be some fragments of the tools or on the bone. So definitely from those impressions we can correlate with the tool.
Thank you, ma'am. That's all the question from our student side, ma'am.
Okay.
Over to our respected dean, sir.
Well, so there is no more question, right? So everything has been done. So it was a really very much interesting talk as well. You know, I had an appointment at a bank to submit some checks for the honorarium of some distinguished speaker, but I saw the talk was very good. So earlier I asked Renu madam to wind up, but then I realized that, okay, quite good. So just I can spend some more time. And throughout, I also improved my understanding about the forensic science, you know. So there is a no education can't be stopped at any point of time. It is always helpful. It always opens our eyes, always push us to think further and so on, and improve ourselves, certainly. So, well, once again, thank you to both the speaker. Unfortunately, Mala madam is not able to join due to the poor net connectivity, perhaps, I understand. But I must thank her for such a nice talk, and also thanks to Priya Sharma ji. So you both have done really a quite good job. Throughout, the forensic faculty members are quite working very hard to say establish quality education for our students, and I'm sure all this will be very much helpful for your future, for your studies and future career, certainly. So again, thank you to everyone, and certainly I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to Renu Singh ji for conducting this second set of this SDP, Student Development Program. And first SDP, it was conducted by Dr. Renu Chaudhary. She has left already. Afterward, you came to organize this talk. So thank you so much. And also I thank to all your associates, Dr. Shashank Kamleji, I think Kamleji is here, and also to Naresh Sharma ji, Dr. Sonika Sethi ji, I think you are also here. So I thank all of you for organizing very sincerely SDP programs, also the career counseling session or expert lecture. Dr. Mongal has organized this expert lecture series, and Sonika Sethi for organizing eminent scientist webinar series. There were altogether 13 sessions were completed last days. So all that took really a lot of effort from all the faculty members, and certainly support from all our very dear students, because we do all these things to improve the quality of education, to improve your understanding, and we received all that support very nicely, very carefully, very sincerely. You all students are very lovely, and you know, maybe many of you might be knowing that I'm leaving by the end of this month, but we will be connected with each other. Wherever, whenever you need my suggestion, you can just drop me a message. I suppose most of you have my mobile number. I won't change this number. And also you have my email ID, so you can write me, you can send me the message whensoever you want my suggestion. So once again, thank you so much indeed. We will be connected. God bless all of you. I wish you nice and wonderful weekend, day, and your time ahead. Thank you so much indeed. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
So
your guidance will always be helpful for us.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, sure, please. Okay, so I may be allowed to leave the meeting, and take care. Take very good care of yourself. Bye.
Bye.